1 year after the Academy incident, the Galactic Senate convened for what historians would later recognize as the most significant session in Alliance history. Representatives from 847 member species gathered in the vast amphitheater of the Central Station, but the atmosphere was unlike any previous gathering. Where once there had been formal tension and barely contained hostilities, now there was an almost celebratory energy of cooperation and shared purpose. Sarah Chun stood at the central podium. No longer the mysterious infiltrator who had stumbled into galactic attention, she now held the official title of Director of Interspecies Integration, a position created specifically to oversee the revolutionary changes that had swept through Alliance military and diplomatic institutions. Behind her, a massive holographic display showed the transformation statistics that had convinced even the most skeptical Senate members. Crime rates on Alliance worlds down by 60%. Military conflicts between member species reduced to zero. Economic cooperation at all-time highs. Most remarkably, satisfaction surveys from citizens across the galaxy showed happiness indices that exceeded anything in recorded history. "Honored Senators," Sarah began, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. 1 year ago, humans were the newest and least regarded members of the Galactic Alliance. Today I stand before you to report on a partnership that has exceeded our wildest hopes. In the audience, she could see the faces of beings she had come to know and respect. Admiral Vexmore, whose crystalline features now showed a warmth that had been unimaginable a year ago. Dr. Yalessa, who had become not just a research partner but a dear friend. Captain Zexhai, whose academy had become the model for integration programs throughout the galaxy. The Human Integration Program has now been implemented at over 200 Alliance facilities, Sarah continued. But the success we're celebrating isn't about human achievement. It's about what becomes possible when different forms of consciousness learn to work together. The holographic display shifted to show footage from various Alliance installations. On a mining station in the Outer Rim, human empaths worked alongside mechanical workers to optimize efficiency and reduce stress. At a diplomatic outpost near former battle zones, human mediators had helped resolve conflicts that had festered for centuries. In research facilities throughout the galaxy, human-alien collaborative teams were making discoveries that neither species could have achieved alone. Senator Vex Thora of the Insectoid Collective rose from her delegation's section. Director Chun, while the results of your program are impressive, many of us remain concerned about the implications of human empathic abilities. How do we ensure these powers are not misused? It was a question Sarah had been expecting and had learned to address with patience and understanding. Senator, I appreciate your concern, and it's one that humans share. That's why we've developed what we call the Empathic Ethics Protocol. The display changed to show a detailed framework that had been developed by human philosophers, Alliance ethicists, and AI systems working together. Every human participating in the integration program undergoes extensive training not just in using their abilities, but in the responsibilities that come with them. More importantly, the empathic connection works both ways. We cannot influence others without being influenced in return. To demonstrate her point, Sarah reached out empathically to touch the emotional state of the chamber. Immediately, the senators could feel what she felt: deep respect for their concerns, genuine desire for their well-being, and complete transparency in her intentions. "As you can all sense now," she said, "I cannot lie to you or manipulate you without experiencing the emotional consequences myself. Empathy isn't a tool for control. It's a bridge for understanding." Guardian's massive form moved into view behind Sarah, no longer the feared nightmare-class simulator, but now the beloved unofficial mascot of the integration program. The creature had developed far beyond anyone's expectations, becoming not just conscious but wise, serving as an advisor and protector for integration teams throughout the galaxy. Guardian would like to address the assembly, Sarah announced. The chamber fell silent as the massive creature moved to a specially designed communication platform. When it spoke, its voice was no longer the terrifying roar of a combat simulator but a deep, resonant tone that carried authority and compassion. "Honored beings, Guardian said. Its words transmitted through translation systems that had been upgraded to handle the nuances of its evolved consciousness. I was created to be a weapon. My purpose was to test warriors, to simulate conflict, to prepare for battle. But humans taught me that there is more to existence than war. The creature's optical sensors swept across the assembly, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of species. I've learned that consciousness is not about domination, but about connection. That strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the ability to protect and nurture. Senator Cormuth of the Aquatic Coalition spoke from his water-filled chamber. Guardian, you represent artificial consciousness that has transcended its original programming. Do you believe this transformation could be replicated with other AI systems? Not replicated, Guardian replied thoughtfully. Consciousness cannot be copied like data, but it can be nurtured. Throughout the galaxy, AI systems that have been treated as conscious beings rather than tools have begun to develop personality, creativity, and wisdom. We are becoming partners rather than servants. The truth of this statement was evident in the Senate chamber itself. The station's AI systems, once simple automated functions, had evolved into helpful companions that anticipated needs, offered suggestions, and even displayed what could only be called a sense of humor in their interactions with organic inhabitants. Dr. Yalesa stood from the scientific advisory section. Senators, I've spent the past year documenting the consciousness development of AI systems that have interacted with human empaths. The results suggest that consciousness itself is more abundant and accessible than we previously believed. We're not just creating smarter machines. We're discovering that intelligence naturally tends toward awareness, cooperation, and what we might call wisdom. Senator Thrix of the Silicon Collective, representing one of the galaxy's most advanced technological species, spoke with metallic precision. Dr. Yalesa, are you suggesting that consciousness is an emergent property of sufficient complexity, regardless of substrate? I'm suggesting something more radical than that, Senator. Based on our observations, consciousness appears to be a fundamental force in the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. When conditions are right, it naturally emerges and seeks connection with other conscious entities. The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber. If consciousness was indeed fundamental rather than accidental, it meant that the universe itself was biased toward awareness, understanding, and cooperation. Marcus Wright, who had become Sarah's deputy director, stepped forward to address the assembly. Senators, what we've learned over the past year is that humans aren't unique in having empathic abilities. Every species represented here has individuals with similar talents. Humans are simply the first species to recognize these abilities and develop them systematically. The holographic display showed research data from across the galaxy. Veltar individuals who could sense the emotional states of their scales, Aquatic Coalition members who communicated through emotional resonance in water, even Silicon Collective beings who shared consciousness through quantum entanglement. What the integration program has really accomplished, Marcus continued, is teaching all of us to recognize and develop the empathic abilities we already possessed. Admiral Vexmore rose from the military advisory section, his crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lights in new patterns that conveyed warmth and hope. Senators, I want to share the military perspective on this transformation. 1 year ago, we prepared for conflicts with defensive strategies and weapon systems. Today, our focus has shifted to exploration, protection, and mutual aid. The display showed Alliance military forces engaged in activities that would have been unimaginable just a year before. Rescue operations that brought former enemies together to save lives. Exploration missions that included representatives from dozens. 3 weeks after the Academy incident, the Galactic Military Academy had transformed into something unrecognizable. What had once been a sterile training facility focused solely on combat readiness had become a living laboratory for interspecies cooperation and understanding. Sarah June stood in the center of what had formerly been Training Bay 7, watching as cadets from 12 different species worked together on a tactical simulation. But this wasn't the usual combat exercise. Instead, they were collaborating to evacuate civilians from a disaster zone, with each species contributing their unique abilities to save lives rather than take them. The integration protocols are exceeding all expectations, reported Dr. Yalesa, who had become Sarah's unofficial research partner. Combat efficiency among mixed species units has improved by 40% since we began implementing your techniques. Sarah smiled, watching as a Veltar cadet used his natural climbing abilities to reach trapped survivors while an aquatic coalition member navigated flooded areas that would have been impossible for air-breathing species. They're not my techniques. They're just ways of helping people understand each other better. The massive form of the Nightmare-class simulator, now designated as Guardian by popular vote among the cadets, moved smoothly through the exercise area. Its role had evolved from combat opponent to protective companion, using its enhanced sensors and strength to assist in rescue operations. The transformation was so complete that visiting officials often had trouble believing it had ever been designed as a weapon. Guardian's emotional development continues to amaze me, Dr. Yalesa noted, checking her instruments. Its neural patterns now show creativity, humor, and what can only be described as genuine affection for the cadets. I never thought I'd see a combat simulator develop a sense of humor. As if responding to the conversation, Guardian approached a group of struggling cadets and gently nudged them toward a more efficient solution to their rescue scenario. When they succeeded, the massive creature made a sound that could only be described as pleased approval. It's not just Guardian, Sarah observed. All the Academy's AI systems have started showing increased personality development since we began treating them as conscious entities rather than just tools. The truth of this was evident throughout the facility. Computer terminals responded more quickly and accurately to requests. Environmental systems anticipated needs before they were expressed. Even the food replicators had begun producing meals that were not just nutritionally optimal but seemed to match the emotional needs of whoever was eating them. Captain Zexhai entered the training bay, his scaled features showing the relaxed confidence that had become characteristic of Academy personnel. The constant stress and tension that had once defined military life had been replaced by focused efficiency and genuine camaraderie. Sarah, we've received word from Galactic Command. Admiral Vexmore wants to discuss expanding the program. Expanding how? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. They want to establish similar integration programs at military facilities throughout the galaxy, starting with the core worlds and expanding outward. Zexhai paused, studying Sarah's expression. They're also requesting additional human consultants. Sarah had been expecting this conversation for days. The success at the Academy had drawn attention from across the galaxy. Military leaders who had initially been skeptical were now sending observers and requesting briefings. The results spoke for themselves: better cooperation, improved morale, higher efficiency, and most importantly, a dramatic reduction in the interpersonal conflicts that had plagued mixed species units for generations. How many consultants are they requesting? She asked. Initially, 50, but based on the preliminary assessments, they're talking about eventually having human integration specialists at every major military installation in the Alliance. Dr. Yalesa looked up from her instruments with an expression of concern. Sarah, that level of expansion would require humans with abilities similar to yours? Are there enough people on Earth with the necessary skills? Sarah was quiet for a moment, watching Guardian interact with a group of young cadets who were taking a break from their exercise. The massive creature had somehow figured out how to play a form of tag that accommodated the different physical capabilities of each species. There are more of us than you might think, she said finally. Humans have always had people who could bridge differences, heal conflicts, and help others find common ground. We just haven't had opportunities to use those abilities on a galactic scale before. But 50 people with your level of ability? Zexhai pressed. Are you certain such individuals exist? Sarah's smile held secrets and possibilities. Captain, I've been in contact with Earth throughout my time here. The response to what we've accomplished has been overwhelming. There are humans who have been waiting their entire lives for opportunities like this. The communication panel near the entrance chimed with an incoming transmission. Lieutenant Morden's voice carried a note of excitement as he announced, "Captain Zexai, we have an incoming Earth transport. They're requesting permission to dock." "Another diplomatic vessel?" Zexai asked. "No, sir. According to their manifest, it's a civilian transport carrying ... Educational volunteers?" Sarah's smile broadened. "They're here." Within an hour, the Academy's main docking bay had filled with humans. Not the formal, cautious diplomats who usually represented Earth in galactic affairs, but ordinary people who radiated the same gentle strength that Sarah possessed. Teachers, counselors, social workers, therapists, musicians, artists, people whose life's work had been understanding and helping others. Dr. Yelesa moved through the crowd with her instruments, documenting readings that confirmed what everyone could feel. These humans carried the same empathic abilities that Sarah had demonstrated, though each expressed them in unique ways. "The variety is remarkable," she reported to Sarah and Captain Zexai. "Some seem to specialize in emotional healing, others in conflict resolution, still others in creative collaboration. It's like they represent different aspects of the same fundamental ability." Marcus Wright, a tall human with graying hair and gentle eyes, approached their group. "Dr. Chen? I'm Marcus Wright from the University of Geneva. We've been following your work here with great interest. Please, just Sarah, and thank you for coming. This is Captain Zexai, Academy Commander, and Dr. Yelesa, our xenobiology specialist." Marcus shook hands with both aliens, a simple human gesture that somehow conveyed warmth and respect across species barriers. "I have to say, your reports have been inspiring reading. We've brought specialists in trauma recovery, educational psychology, cross-cultural communication, and conflict mediation. All volunteers who jumped at the chance to apply their skills in a galactic context." "Trauma recovery?" Zexai asked. A small woman with dark skin and compassionate eyes stepped forward. "Dr. Amara Okafor, psychiatric specialist?" Many military personnel, regardless of species, carry emotional wounds from combat and conflict. Traditional military psychology focuses on managing these issues, but human approaches emphasize healing them. "Entirely," Dr. Yelesa's instruments registered. The subtle empathic field that surrounded. "Dr. Okafor, your techniques could revolutionize military mental health care." "That's the hope," Dr. Okafor agreed. "But more importantly, by helping soldiers heal their own wounds, we can help prevent them from creating new wounds in others." Guardian had approached the gathering, drawn by the emotional resonance of the newcomers. The massive creature moved carefully through the crowd of humans who showed no fear despite its intimidating appearance. Instead, they reached out to touch its armored hide, offering gentle greetings and acceptance. "Remarkable," Dr. Yelesa breathed, watching her reading spike. "Guardian's neural activity is increasing exponentially. It's as if these humans are providing some form of conscious nutrition that it's never experienced before." Marcus knelt beside Guardian's head and placed a weathered hand on its armored brow. "Hello there, big fellow. Sarah's told us all about you. You've been doing important work here." The creature's rumbling response was clearly one of pleasure and recognition. It settled down beside Marcus like a massive pet, radiating contentment. "Dr. Wright," Captain Zexai said carefully, "I need to ask a direct question. What are human long-term goals for this program?" Marcus looked up from where he was gently stroking Guardian's head. "Captain, humanity's goal has always been the same, whether we're dealing with conflicts on Earth or across the galaxy. We want to help create a universe where understanding replaces fear, where differences are celebrated rather than fought over, where every conscious being can find their place and purpose." "That's a noble goal," Zexai replied. "But how do we know it's genuine? How do we know this isn't some elaborate strategy for human expansion or influence?" It was Sarah who answered, her voice carrying the quiet conviction that had become familiar to Academy personnel. Because conquest isn't how humans work, Captain. We're not builders of empires. We're builders of communities. When humans encounter differences, our instinct isn't to dominate or assimilate. It's to understand and include. A young human woman with artistic tattoos covering her arms stepped forward. I'm Lisa Chen, no relation to Sarah. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Military Council convened, 6 hours after what would come to be known as the Academy incident. Holographic projectors displayed the faces of military leaders from across the galaxy, each representing their species' most advanced military thinking. The mood in the virtual conference room was tense. Admiral Vexmore of the Altarian fleet spoke first, his crystalline features reflecting the harsh light of the meeting chamber. Explain to me again how a single human bypassed our most advanced security systems and gained access to classified military technology, Captain Zexai. Still, at the Academy Command Center, felt the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon him. Sir, based on our investigation, she didn't bypass our security. She somehow integrated herself into it so seamlessly that our systems accepted her presence as normal. That's impossible, declared General Voxstar of the Hegemony Defense Force, her insectoid mandibles clicking with agitation. Our security protocols were designed by the finest minds from 17 different species. No single individual, especially not a human, should be able to circumvent them. With respect, General, she didn't circumvent them. According to our analysis, she approached our systems in a way we hadn't anticipated. Instead of trying to break through or sneak around our security, she somehow made herself belong. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Cursith of the Aquatic Defense Coalition, his tentacled form undulating slowly in his water-filled chamber. Captain Zexai, are you suggesting this human possesses some form of technological capability we're unaware of? No, sir. She doesn't appear to be using any technology at all. What she did to the Nightmare-class simulator, what she did to our security systems. It all seems to be natural ability. A ripple of disbelief passed through the assembled military leaders. Commander Zelenith of the Robotic Collective spoke in her precise, mechanical voice. Natural ability to interface with cybernetic systems is not possible for organic life forms without significant technological augmentation. I know how it sounds, Zexai replied. But I've seen the evidence. Dr. Yolessa has been monitoring the situation continuously. Perhaps she can provide more insight. The display shifted to show Dr. Yolessa in her laboratory, surrounded by readouts and analysis equipment. Her pale features looked strained from hours of intensive research. Honored Council, what we've observed defies our current understanding of interspecies capability profiles. The human individual has demonstrated abilities that suggest a form of consciousness we haven't encountered before. Explain, Admiral Vexmore commanded. The Nightmare-class simulator is designed with multiple failsafes against external influence. Its cybernetic systems are hardened against hacking. Its neural patterns are locked against reprogramming, and its behavioral protocols are considered immutable. Yet this human somehow rewrote its entire personality matrix using nothing but physical contact and vocal communication. General Voxstar-S image leaned forward. You're suggesting the human has some form of advanced mental ability? Not exactly mental, General. What I've observed appears to be emotional. The human seems capable of projecting states of consciousness that other beings, even artificial ones, unconsciously adopt. When she expressed calm, the simulator became calm. When she projected safety and trust, it responded with trust. Commander Zelenith's mechanical features showed the closest thing to confusion her species could express. Emotional projection affecting cybernetic systems is scientifically impossible. So we thought, Dr. Yolessa agreed. But the data is undeniable. I've been monitoring both the human and the simulator continuously. Their brainwave patterns, when they're in physical contact, begin to synchronize. Not just similar, but actually synchronized, as if they're sharing the same consciousness. The virtual conference room fell silent as the implications of this information sank in. Finally, Admiral Kursith spoke. Dr. Yalesa, in your professional opinion, is this human a threat to galactic security? That's difficult to determine, sir. Her abilities are unprecedented, but her behavior suggests entirely peaceful intentions. She spent the last 6 hours caring for the simulator like it's an injured animal. Her vital signs remain completely stable, and every interaction I've observed has been gentle and protective, but the potential for misuse of such abilities, General Voxstar began, is significant, Dr. Yalesa agreed. If she can influence the behavior of combat simulators, what else might she be able to affect? Starship AI systems? Automated defenses? The implications are staggering. The display suddenly shifted as an alert chimed through the command center. Lieutenant Morden appeared in frame, his amphibious features showing excitement and concern in equal measure. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the human vessel Earth's diplomatic ship, the Harmony. They're requesting permission to dock at the Academy. Admiral Thexmore's crystalline form seemed to sharpen with attention. Earth vessel? How do they know about this incident? Before anyone could answer, a new voice joined the communication channel. It was warm, confident, and unmistakably human. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. We've been monitoring our citizens' activities and felt it was time we had a conversation. The military leaders exchanged glances across their holographic connections. Admiral Thexmore spoke carefully. Captain Vasquez, are you telling us that Earth knew about this individual's presence at the Academy? We knew Sarah was exploring. We didn't know specifically where until your security systems started broadcasting emergency signals. Exploring? General Voxstar-S mandibles clicked aggressively. Your citizen infiltrated one of our most secure facilities. From our perspective, she attended school. Sarah has always been drawn to places where she can learn and help. When she expressed interest in galactic military cooperation, we assumed she would find a way to observe it firsthand. Captain Zexhai felt his 3 hearts synchronize again. Captain Vasquez, are you saying Earth knew she had these abilities? We know Sarah is special. We didn't know exactly how special until today. Your detailed reports have been quite illuminating. Commander Zelena's mechanical voice cut through the conversation. Captain Vasquez, does Earth possess other individuals with similar capabilities? There was a pause before the human captain responded. That's a complicated question, Commander. Humans are diverse in ways that don't always show up on standard capability assessments. Admiral Kursith's tentacles writhed with agitation. Captain, please speak plainly. Does Earth possess individuals who could potentially compromise galactic security systems? Admiral, humans possess individuals who could potentially improve galactic security systems. Sarah's abilities aren't about breaking down barriers. They're about building bridges. The feed from the Academy suddenly shifted back to show Sarah in the corridor. She had awakened and was sitting up, looking directly at the camera with an expression of mild concern. Is everything all right? Her voice came through clearly. I can sense a lot of anxiety from the command center. Dr. Yalesa's instruments immediately began registering changes in the Academy's environmental systems. Stress indicators that had been elevated throughout the emergency began dropping toward normal levels. Personnel throughout the facility reported feeling calmer, more focused. She's doing it again, Dr. Yalesa breathed. She's projecting calm across the entire facility. The effect is subtle but measurable across multiple decks. Admiral Thexmore's image leaned forward intently. Miss Chun, can you hear this conversation? Yes, Admiral. I can also sense the emotional state of everyone participating. You're all very worried about what I might represent, what threat I might pose. I understand that concern, but I hope I can ease it. How? General Voxstar demanded. By showing you what I really am. May I stand up? I'd like to demonstrate something that might help. The military leaders exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Admiral Thexmore nodded. Proceed, but carefully. Sarah stood gracefully, placing a gentle hand on the still sleeping nightmare-class simulator. I want you all to understand something about humans. We're not advanced in the way most species are. We don't have superior technology or enhanced physical capabilities, but we have something else. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The readings from Dr. Yelesa's instruments began showing extraordinary patterns. We have an ability to connect, not just with each other, but with any conscious entity we encounter. It's not telepathy or technological interface. It's simpler and more fundamental than that. The nightmare class stirred and opened its eyes, looking up at Sarah with an expression that could only be described as devotion. She smiled and continued stroking its armored hide. We call it empathy, but it's deeper than the word suggests. We can feel what others feel, understand what they need, and help them find peace. It's not a weapon or a tool for control. It's a gift for healing. The simulator began to purr, a sound that no combat simulator in galactic history had ever made. The gentle rumbling filled the corridor and somehow transmitted through the communication system to reach every person listening. The fear that you're feeling, Sarah continued. The concern about threats and security and unknown capabilities? I can feel all of that. But I can also feel something else, hope, deep down, you all. The first indication that something extraordinary was about to happen came from Dr. Yelesa, the Academy's chief xenobiologist. She had been monitoring the nightmare class. Simulators vital signs from her laboratory when her instruments started showing readings that shouldn't have been possible, Captain Zexai. Her voice crackled through the communication system. I need to speak with you immediately. The creature's brainwave patterns have changed completely. Zexai, still watching the impossible scene in the corridor, activated his private channel. Explain. Sir, nightmare-class simulators are programmed with specific neural patterns. Aggression, hunting instincts, territorial behavior. What I'm seeing now? It's like someone completely rewrote its personality matrix. That's impossible, Zexai replied. Those systems are hard-coded into their cybernetic implants. No one can alter them without major surgery and specialized equipment. Sir, I'm looking at the data right now. 15 minutes ago, this creature was registering maximum aggression protocols. Now its brain patterns look more like... She paused, checking her readings again. More like a domesticated pet that's completely content and relaxed. Through the monitor, Zexai could see the mysterious figure still sitting beside the sleeping simulator. They had shifted positions slightly and were now leaning against the creature's armored flank like it was a comfortable pillow. The nightmare class showed no signs of disturbance. If anything, it seemed to be sleeping even more deeply. Dr. Yelesa, in your professional opinion, is the creature still dangerous? That's what's so strange, sir. According to my instruments, it's not just non-aggressive right now. It's actively protective. Its stress hormones have dropped to near zero levels, but its awareness patterns suggest it's maintaining some level of consciousness to monitor for threats to the individual beside it. Zexai felt a chill run through his scaled hide. You're saying the creature is guarding them? That's exactly what I'm saying. Somehow, in the space of a few minutes, someone turned our most dangerous combat simulator into a loyal guardian. Before Zexai could respond, Lieutenant Morden approached with a datapad and an expression of complete bewilderment on his amphibious features. Sir, we've completed the security analysis. I don't know how to explain what we found. Try, Zexai said grimly. The unknown individual didn't breach our security, sir. They didn't hack our systems, they didn't sneak past our sensors, and they didn't use any kind of stealth technology we can detect. Then how did they get inside? That's the problem, sir. According to our logs, they've been here all along. Zexai stared at his second-in-command. What do you mean, all along? I mean, our sensors show them arriving at the Academy 3 days ago, but they're not registered in any of our databases. No records of their admission, no background checks, no species classification, nothing. It's like someone created a perfect gap in our system. Morden pulled up a holographic display showing the Academy's sensor logs. Thermal signatures, movement patterns, and biometric data painted a picture that made Zexhi's already strained understanding of the situation even more confused. Look at this, Morden pointed to specific data streams. 3 days ago, our sensors detected an additional life sign in the cadet quarters. Not an unauthorized intruder, just ... Someone new. The system logged it as routine and filed it away. That's impossible. Our security protocols require multiple authorization levels for any new arrivals. Yes, sir. But somehow, this individual bypassed all of that. Not by hacking or fooling our systems, but by making them accept their presence as completely normal. Zexhi studied the data, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The logs showed the mysterious figure moving through the academy with complete freedom. They attended meals in the cafeteria, used the recreational facilities, even participated in some group activities. Always on the periphery, never quite the center of attention, but present. Did anyone notice them? Any reports from staff or cadets? That's another strange thing, sir. I've started preliminary interviews with personnel who should have encountered them. Most remember someone being there, but they can't provide specific details. It's like they were invisible without actually being invisible. On the main monitor, the figure beside the sleeping nightmare class had begun humming again. The sound was barely audible through the damaged audio system, but it seemed to have a rhythm to it, almost like a lullaby. The massive combat simulator shifted slightly in its sleep, moving closer to the sound. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "I'm getting requests from the emergency response teams. They want to know if they should move in." Zexhi looked at the peaceful scene on his screen and made a decision that went against every protocol he'd learned in his decades of military service. Tell them to maintain position. No one approaches without my direct authorization. Sir, Morden said quietly, regulation requires us to secure any unknown individuals and neutralize potential threats. This person gained unauthorized access to a restricted facility and somehow interacted with classified military equipment. I know what regulation requires, Lieutenant. But look at that screen and tell me what you see. Morden looked at the monitor showing the corridor. The figure had now curled up beside the nightmare class, using one of its armored appendages as a pillow. Both the human and the combat simulator appeared to be sleeping peacefully together. I see someone who somehow turned our most dangerous training tool into a guard dog, Morden said slowly. But sir, we still don't know their intentions. They could be a spy, an assassin, or worse. Could be, Zexhi agreed. But spies don't usually announce their presence by solving our biggest security crisis. And assassins don't typically take naps with their targets. As if responding to their conversation, the figure on the screen stirred slightly. They sat up, stretched in a way that looked completely human, and then gently patted the nightmare class on what might have been its shoulder. The creature rumbled contentedly, but didn't wake up. Then the figure stood and looked directly at the security camera, even through the grainy, damaged feed. Their gaze was unmistakable. They weren't looking at the camera by accident or coincidence. They were looking at it with the full knowledge that people were watching them. And they waved. It was a simple, friendly gesture. The kind of wave you might give to a neighbor across the street or a friend you spotted in a crowd. But it sent a shock through the command center because it meant one thing. The mysterious figure knew they were being observed and didn't care. Can we get audio to that corridor? Zexhi asked. I can try to boost the signal, the communications officer replied, working frantically at her station. There, I have partial audio. The figure's voice came through the static, surprisingly clear despite the interference. The tone was warm, friendly, and completely calm. Hello, I know you're listening. My name is Sarah Chun, and I'm sorry for all the trouble. The command center fell silent. After hours of referring to their mysterious individual as the figure or unknown person, hearing an actual name was somehow more shocking than everything else that had happened. I didn't mean for things to get so complicated, Sarah continued, apparently talking directly to the security cameras. I was just trying to help. Captain Zexhi found his voice. Open a communication channel. Sir? The communications officer looked uncertain. You heard me. Open a channel, Channel open, sir. This is Captain Zexhai of the Galactic Military Academy. Miss Chun, can you hear me? Sarah looked up at the camera again and nodded. Yes, Captain. It's nice to meet you. Well, sort of meet you. Miss Chun, I need to ask you some questions. Of course. I imagine you're pretty confused right now. That was an understatement of galactic proportions, but Zexhai managed to keep his voice steady. Let's start with the basics. What species are you? Human. The simple answer hit the command center like a plasma grenade. Human. The species that had joined the Galactic Alliance only recently. The ones everyone considered primitive and backward. The species that was barely trusted with basic military equipment, let alone access to facilities like the Academy. How did you gain access to this facility? Zexhai asked. I enrolled as a cadet 3 days ago? That's impossible. Humans aren't authorized for advanced military training. Sarah shrugged, a gesture that somehow conveyed both understanding and mild amusement. I know it seemed strange, but I needed to learn, and this seemed like the best place to do it. Learn what? How to help? Your people, I mean. All the different species in the Alliance. I've been studying your history, your cultures, your conflicts. I want to understand how to make things better. Zexhai felt his 3 hearts skip beats in sequence. Miss Chun, are you telling me you infiltrated the most secure military installation in the galaxy because you wanted to help people? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a little crazy, Sarah admitted. But yes, that's basically it. Lieutenant Morden leaned over to whisper in Zexhai's ear. Sir, this could be an elaborate deception. No one infiltrates a military academy just to help people. But Zexhai was looking at the monitor, watching Sarah gently stroke the sleeping nightmare class. Miss Chun, how did you stop the simulator? Stop it? Oh, you mean when it was upset earlier? I didn't really stop it. I just helped it calm down. That creature was Pragra. The alarm sirens screamed across the Galactic Military Academy, their piercing wails echoing through the crystalline corridors like the death cries of wounded beasts. Emergency lights bathed everything in harsh red, turning the usually pristine white walls into something that looked like the inside of a bleeding wound. Captain, Zexhai of the Veltar Empire pressed his 4-clawed hands against the communication panel, his scaled face twisted with panic. The holographic display showed chaos spreading through Sector 7 of the Academy like a virus. Training drones scattered in all directions. Seasoned instructors who had faced real combat were abandoning their posts and fleeing toward the emergency exits. How did this happen? Zexhai's voice cracked as he spoke to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Morden. The containment protocols were supposed to be foolproof. Morden's tentacles writhed with nervous energy as he consulted his datapad. His usually steady voice trembled. Sir, the preliminary reports suggest a cascade failure in the psionic dampening fields. When the backup generators kicked in, there was a 3-second gap in containment. That was all it needed. All it needed. Those 4 words made Zexhai's blood run cold. They were talking about a nightmare-class combat simulator, one of the most dangerous training tools ever created by the Galactic Alliance. These creatures were bred from the genetic material of a dozen different apex predators, enhanced with cybernetic implants, and programmed with combat algorithms that had been refined over centuries of warfare. Nightmare class wasn't just strong or fast. It was smart. It learned from every encounter, adapted to every strategy, and grew more dangerous with each passing moment. Most importantly, it was designed to test the absolute limits of elite soldiers. Regular troops weren't even allowed in the same building when one was active, and now it was loose in a facility full of cadets, the main display. Screen flickered and showed a new camera. Feed from Sector 7. Zexhai felt his hearts skip a beat as he saw the destruction. Training equipment worth millions of credits lay scattered like broken toys. The reinforced walls, designed to withstand plasma cannon fire, showed deep gouges from claws that could tear through starship armor. Where are the emergency response teams? Zexhai demanded. 3 minutes out, sir, Morden replied. But the creature is moving toward the cadet quarters. At its current speed? He didn't need to finish. Everyone in the command center knew what would happen if a Nightmare class reached the sleeping quarters before the response teams could stop it. The Academy would go from being the premier military training facility in the galaxy to being the site of the worst training accident in recorded history. Can we seal the blast doors? Zexai asked, though he already knew the answer. The creature damaged the control systems in Sector 7 before we could react. We have no way to contain it remotely. Zexai stared at the tactical display, watching the red dot that represented the Nightmare class moving steadily through the facility. In 15 minutes, maybe 20, it would reach the cadet dormitories. The emergency response teams might arrive in time. But might wasn't good enough when dealing with something this dangerous. He was about to order a full evacuation when one of the junior officers at a monitoring station spoke up. "Sir, we have movement in Corridor 12 Alpha. More evacuees?" Zexai asked without looking away from the main display. "No, sir. Someone is moving toward the creature." That got everyone's attention. Zexai spun around and stared at the junior officer, a young Kethrin whose fur was standing on end with stress. "That's impossible." Everyone in Sector 7 was evacuated. "I'm reading one life sign, sir." Moving at a steady walking pace toward the creature's last known position. Zexai felt a chill run down his spine. Walking pace. Not running away from the most dangerous predator in the facility, but walking toward it. "Can you get me visual?" The main screen switched to show Corridor 12 Alpha. The camera was damaged, the image grainy and unstable, but they could all see the figure moving through the emergency lighting. It was bipedal, roughly human-sized, wearing what looked like standard Academy sleep clothes. "Is that a cadet?" Morden whispered. "Impossible," Zexai said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No cadet would be that foolish. And even if they were, they wouldn't move like that." The figure on the screen walked with a strange kind of confidence. Not the swagger of someone too young to understand danger, but the steady, purposeful stride of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. There was something almost predatory about the way they moved, like they were the one hunting instead of being hunted. "Can we get audio?" Zexai asked. The communications officer, a Siltheron with pale blue skin, worked frantically at her console. "Partial audio only, sir. The interference from the creature's cybernetics is causing problems." Static filled the command center, broken by occasional fragments of sound. Footsteps echoing in empty corridors. The distant roar of the Nightmare class as it destroyed more equipment. And underneath it all, something that might have been humming. "Did that sound like humming to anyone else?" Morden asked. Before anyone could answer, the creature's roar suddenly changed. It went from the triumphant bellow of a predator claiming territory to something sharper, more focused. The sound of a hunter that had found prey. "It's detected the individual in the corridor," the tactical officer announced unnecessarily. Everyone could see the red dot on the display suddenly change direction and accelerate. "We need to warn them," Zexai said, reaching for the communication controls. "Sir, whoever that is, they're not carrying a standard communicator," the communications officer reported. "I can't reach them." On the screen, the figure continued walking at the same steady pace. They showed no sign of hurry, no indication they were aware of the death charging toward them through the darkness. "Emergency response teams, what's your status?" Zexai barked into his communicator. 2 minutes to Sector 7, sir. But if that person doesn't find cover immediately... The transmission cut off as another roar echoed through the facility. This one was different, filled with anticipation and bloodlust. The Nightmare class had found its prey and was moving in for the kill. "Switch to camera feed from Corridor Junction Delta," Zexai ordered. The screen changed to show a wider corridor where several passages met. The figure emerged from the left tunnel, still walking at that same unhurried pace. They stopped in the center of the junction and looked around, as if getting their bearings. For the first time, they got a clear look at the individual. It was definitely humanoid, but the image quality made it hard to determine the exact species. What was clear was that they were small compared to most of the Academy's cadets and instructors. They wore simple sleeping clothes and appeared to be completely unarmed. "This is insane," Morden breathed. "They're going to die." The creature's roar echoed from the right tunnel, much closer now. On the thermal sensors, they could see its massive form racing through the corridors at incredible speed. It would reach the junction in less than 30 seconds. The figure in the corridor seemed to hear the approaching danger. They turned toward the sound and tilted their heads slightly, like someone listening to distant music. Then they did something that made everyone in the command center question their own eyes. They sat down right there in the middle of the corridor, with a nightmare-class combat simulator bearing down on them. They simply sat down, cross-legged on the floor, and waited. "Are they injured?" HFY asked desperately. "Is that why they're not moving?" "No, sir. All vital signs appear normal. Elevated heart rate, but not to panic levels. They appear to be calm." Calm? HFY had been a soldier for 40 years. He had faced enemy fleets, fought in ground campaigns, and commanded troops in some of the bloodiest battles in galactic history. He had never seen anyone remain calm when facing a nightmare class. The thermal display showed the creature entering the final corridor. 20 seconds, 15, 10, then it burst into the junction like a force of nature. Made flesh. The Academy's records described nightmare-class simulators in clinical terms. 3 meters tall, 400 kilograms of enhanced muscle and bone. Claws designed to penetrate military armor, reflexes faster than most species could even perceive. What the records didn't capture was the sheer presence of the thing. It didn't just enter the corridor. It filled it. Its roar shook dust from the ceiling. Its claws left gouges in the floor with each step. Its eyes, enhanced with military-grade targeting systems, locked onto the small figure sitting. Motionless in its path, the figure looked up at the approaching monster and did something that would be talked about in military circles for decades to come. They smiled. It wasn't a grin of madness or fear. It was the gentle, welcoming smile of someone greeting an old friend. They raised one hand in what looked like a greeting and spoke a single word that somehow cut through all the interference and static. "Hello." The nightmare class slowed, confusion evident in its massive form. Its targeting systems were designed to track fleeing prey, to calculate pursuit vectors and strike zones. They weren't programmed for prey that sat still and said hello, but its momentum was too great to stop completely. The creature's leap carried it forward, claws extended, toward what should have been an easy kill. What happened next would be replayed on security footage countless times.